In mid-1943, as Europe burned under the fire of World War II, the Allies hatched an audacious plan that could change the course of the conflict in the Mediterranean. Called Operation Husky, this plan was not just another landing. It was a bold assault on the heart of Sicily, the largest island in the Mediterranean, then tightly controlled by Axis powers. The objective was clear: to pave the way for the invasion of mainland Italy, weaken Axis power, and hasten Mussolini's downfall. But executing this mission would require almost surgical precision. Hundreds of ships would be assembled, forming a colossal fleet that would cut through the dark waters of the Mediterranean. Warships, troop transports, tankers, and smaller vessels would join forces in a deadly ballet, each carrying soldiers, tanks, supplies, and the hope of turning the tide of war. In the skies, hundreds of Allied planes would fly over Sicily, carrying bombs that would devastate cities, ports, and enemy positions, creating chaos and panic among Italian and German troops. Each bombing raid was calculated to create breaches, but the risk of losing pilots and planes was enormous. On the ground, thousands of soldiers, American, British, and Canadian, prepared for the crossing. Each man knew they would face intense enemy fire as soon as they set foot on the Sicilian sand. The tension was palpable. Some soldiers wrote letters to their families, others prayed silently, while officers drew up maps and detailed attack plans. Every detail of the operation was meticulously planned: landing times, approach routes, attack sectors, and evacuation points. It was a gigantic operation, larger than any seen before in that theater of war, where logistics, courage, and blood would intertwine. The risk was immense. Any mistake could mean hundreds, perhaps thousands of instant deaths. But the fate of the war depended on that strategic move. Sicily would be the stage where the audacity and brutality of war would collide, and the eyes of the world would turn to those shores that would soon become a hell of fire, steel, and courage. Don't miss the next chapter in the bloody history of World War II. Subscribe now. The sky prepares. Aerial bombardments. Even before the soldiers set foot in Sicily, the skies became a battlefield in their own right. Allied planes streaked across the horizon, their engines roaring like beasts ready to attack. The mission was clear: weaken enemy defenses and create chaos that would make the landing less deadly. But the price would be high. Each bomber that took off carried not only bombs, but also the lives of pilots and crew members who knew many would not return. Explosions shook cities, ports, and coastal fortifications. The ground shook under the impact of the bombs. Buildings crumbled in clouds of dust and smoke, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and burning wood. Unprepared enemy soldiers ran for cover, but the intensity of the attack left little room for defense. Pilots flew low to mark strategic targets, dodging anti-aircraft fire and sudden storms. Each bomb dropped was a calculated strike, but the unpredictability of war turned each mission into a deadly game of nerves. Some planes were hit and went down in flames, while others miraculously managed to return, bringing tales of destruction and heroism. Meanwhile, on the ships preparing for landing, the distant sound of explosions indicated that the battle had already begun, even before the first soldier touched the Sicilian sand. The sky, shrouded in smoke and fire, was a grim warning. This invasion would not be just a military confrontation, it would be an extreme test of courage, endurance, and sacrifice. Each city attacked, each fortification destroyed, brought the Allies closer to their ultimate objective. But it also made clear that Sicily would be a bloody battlefield, where men and machines would clash in a deadly dance that would decide the future of Europe. If you want to see courage, sacrifice, and epic battles in detail, click subscribe. The Mediterranean crossing. As the skies roared with bombardments and explosions, the Allied fleet advanced across the Mediterranean. Hundreds of ships carrying soldiers, tanks, and supplies cut through the dark waters like a giant serpent of steel and wood. Each wave represented not only the natural movement of the sea, but also the constant risk of enemy torpedoes and air attacks that could turn the crossing into an instant sinking. On the transport ships, the soldiers clutched their weapons, took deep breaths, and tried to control the fear that gripped their chests. Some gazed at the horizon, imagining what awaited them in Sicily. Others wrote quick messages to their families, knowing this might be their last chance to communicate with the world they were leaving behind. The sea was calm, but the tension was palpable. Everyone knew the calm was just a prelude to the coming hell. The officers coordinated every move. Disembarkation times, approach routes, and attack sectors. Any mistake could cost hundreds of lives in minutes. The sailors and soldiers exchanged silent glances, each carrying courage, anxiety, and the weight of a responsibility few could comprehend. As the ships advanced, small reconnaissance boats advanced ahead of the fleet, braving mines and enemy gunfire to map the landing points. Every smoke signal, every strange noise raised their adrenaline, and silently the soldiers felt the moment approaching, the time to touch down on the Sicilian sands and turn the crossing into open warfare. The crossing wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Every minute that passed, every wave that rocked the ships, brought ordinary men closer to the greatest test of courage of their lives. The Mediterranean, so serene from afar, was now the gateway to the chaos, blood, and courage that would define the Operation Husky. Enter the battlefield with us. Sign up and live the story. First contact, Gela and Licata Beach. At dawn, after days of crossing the Mediterranean, the Allied soldiers finally sighted Sicily. The beaches of Gela and Licata loomed in the distance, bathed in pale sunlight, but the beauty of the scenery hid the hell that awaited them. As soon as the first boats touched the sand, enemy fire descended upon them like a storm of steel and gunpowder. Enemy machine guns ripped through the air, grenades exploded in the sand, and the smell of gunpowder mingled with the smoke and sea air. Many soldiers fell before even setting foot firmly on the beach, while others advanced with desperate courage, crawling, leaping over craters, and trying to shield themselves from the fire coming from fortified bunkers. Every step was a battle for survival. Allied tanks were pushed onto the sand, protecting the soldiers, but they also became easy targets for enemy guns. Waves crashed over the boats, mixing saltwater, blood, and sand, while men screamed, cried, or simply advanced, driven by survival instinct and the exhaustive training that had prepared them for this moment. In Licata, the situation was equally chaotic. British soldiers disembarked under intense fire, facing physical and moral obstacles. Each bunker destroyed, each machine gun silenced, represented a small victory, but each loss was immediately remembered as the cruel price of war. This first contact set the tone for the Operation Husky, brutal, merciless, and unpredictable. The Allies had reached Sicily, but the road ahead would be bloody, marked by courage, heroism, and extreme sacrifice. The battle that would ensue would not just be over territory, but over the will of men and entire nations. Every battle has a price. Every story deserves to be remembered. Subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Tanks in Action and German Defense. As the soldiers advanced along the beaches, the terrain became a field of fire and steel. The Germans, known for their discipline and sophisticated warfare, quickly responded with tanks and heavy artillery, trying to halt the Allied advance at any cost. The ground shook with each cannon shot, and the smoke from the explosions enveloped men and machines in a deadly veil of destruction. The Allied tanks, despite advancing with determination, were easy targets for the German panzers, well positioned on hills and bunkers. Each advance required extreme courage. Soldiers had to run under fire, find makeshift cover, and support the artillery with precise fire. Explosive shells kicked up clouds of sand and debris, and the roar of engines mingled with war cries and utter chaos. The fighting was intense and relentless. Every hill conquered by the Allies was fiercely defended by the enemy, and each partial defeat was a bitter lesson in how Sicily would become a labyrinth of death. Men were crushed by the weight of tanks, hit by machine guns, or caught in the crossfire. The noise was deafening. The smell of gunpowder and burning metal permeated the air, and blood quickly stained the sand on the beaches. Still, the Allies pressed on, driven by the determination to win and carve a path into the island's interior. Each tank destroyed, each bunker destroyed, was a costly victory, but it brought the landing fleet closer to its objective, breaking through the German defenses and continuing the epic march towards Sicily. The battlefield became a bloody painting of courage and despair, where men and machines faced each other in a deadly duel, and where victory could only be achieved with blood, strategy, and audacity. From the blood on the beaches to the fall of the cities, sign up and follow the war like never before. Urban combat in Gela. As Allied soldiers advanced into the heart of Gela, the battle shifted from open beaches to the city's narrow, labyrinthine streets. Every block became a death trap, where gunfire from buildings, alleys, and windows exploded with relentless force. The once peaceful city was now a field of fire, debris, and despair. Soldiers crawled through wrecked cars, rubble, and bomb craters, trying to hold the line while facing fierce resistance. Grenades were thrown at fortified buildings, cannons were fired at close range, and machine guns sliced the air with deadly precision. Every corner hid danger, and every door could be the last a man would ever pass through. Civilians were caught in the crossfire as soldiers advanced, engaging the enemy and trying to protect the survivors. The smell of gunpowder, smoke and blood permeated the air, and the sound of explosions and screams created a macabre symphony that could only be described as war at its rawest and most brutal. Despite the chaos, the Allies advanced with relentless determination. Every building captured, every bunker destroyed, every machine gun silenced was a victory, but the price was high. Lives were lost, men were wounded, and the city became increasingly unrecognizable. The urban combat at Gela showed that war was not limited to the open field. It infiltrated the homes, the streets, and the minds of men. Each step forward was won with blood, courage, and iron determination, making it clear that Sicily would not be taken easily. Heroes, tragedies, and strategy, all in one place. Subscribe now. As the roar of battle echoed across the beaches and streets of Sicily, an equally vital theater of war unfolded in the skies and surrounding waters. Operation Husky, the Allied landings in Sicily in 1943, would not have been possible without the coordination and overwhelming power of the air and navy. Far from being mere supporting actors, these forces were the pillars that sustained the ground advance, transforming the Sicilian environment into a three-dimensional battlefield where every square meter was fiercely contested. In the air, Allied aircraft, composed of squadrons of heavy and medium bombers, as well as agile fighters, tore through the skies on missions ranging from strategic bombing to close air support. Missions weren't just about destroying enemy fortifications. They also aimed to dismantle transportation infrastructure like bridges and railways, isolating Axis forces and cutting off the flow of reinforcements and supplies. Each sortie was a life-or-death gamble, with crews facing a relentless barrage of anti-aircraft fire and the constant threat of enemy fighters. The drone of engines mingled with the roar of explosions, and the once blue sky became a tapestry of black smoke and condensation. Trails, testament to the intensity of the dogfights. The pilot's courage was tested with every dive, with every burst of machine gun fire, transforming each flight into an act of bravery and skill. Precision was paramount. Bombs were supposed to hit their designated targets to maximize impact and minimize collateral damage, although the fog of war and enemy resistance often made such accuracy a Herculean challenge. Simultaneously, the Allied Navy played an equally monumental role. A vast armada of warships, including battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, advanced through the waters of the Mediterranean, their heavy guns poised to deliver devastating blows against the Axis coastal defenses. The naval bombardment was a symphony of steel and fire, with large caliber shells tearing through the air and exploding with seismic force as they struck enemy fortifications. Explosions shook the terrain, tearing down concrete walls, opening gigantic craters, and raising clouds of dust and smoke that obscured the landscape. Naval artillery not only cleared the way for the landing troops, but also demoralized the enemy, who found themselves helpless in the face of such overwhelming firepower. The impact of the explosions reverberated beneath the feet of the disembarking soldiers, a constant reminder of the fury of the battle and the unwavering support that came from the sea. In addition to bombardment, the Navy was responsible for transporting and landing tens of thousands of soldiers, vehicles, and supplies. Landing craft from small LCVPs, landing craft vehicle personnel, to the largest LSTs, landing ship tank, faced a myriad of dangers: submarine torpedoes, hidden naval mines, and coordinated enemy airstrikes. Every vessel was a potential target, and crossing the Sicilian waters was a test of endurance and resilience. The beach, once a place of natural beauty, was transformed into an inferno of twisted steel, churning water and fire, with smoke mixed with sea air, making the scene nearly unbreathable for those fighting to establish a beachhead. Coordination between landing waves and naval fire support was meticulous, but the unpredictability of combat always introduced elements of chaos and improvised heroism. The role of aviation and the Navy went far beyond mere destruction. It was a strategic function, intrinsically linked to the success of the ground operation. By breaking enemy defenses, suppressing artillery, and providing continuous air and naval cover, these forces ensured that every ground advance had a realistic chance of success. Hard-won Allied air superiority allowed bombers to operate with greater freedom, while fighters protected troops on the ground from enemy air attack. At sea, the ability to project firepower directly to the coast and keep supply lines open was vital to sustaining the campaign. However, this victory did not come without a terrible cost. The skies over Sicily were dotted with the wreckage of downed planes, and the waters swallowed damaged ships and the lives of their crews. Each loss was a grim reminder that victory, however glorious, was always paid for at the highest price: the blood and sacrifice of brave men and women. In Sicily, the sky and sea were not merely geographic features. They became dynamic extensions of the battlefield, where courage, fire, and sacrifice intertwined in a deadly dance that would determine the fate of Operation Husky and, ultimately, the course of the war in Europe. Without the dominance and integration of these forces, the landings would undoubtedly have been just another massacre, a tragedy to be added to the annals of military history. The synergy between air and naval power was the key that opened the door to the liberation of Sicily and, later, Italy. The complexity of air operations. Beyond bombing, air operations in Sicily were a complex ballet of coordination and courage. In addition to strategic bombing and close air support, Allied aviation played a crucial role in intelligence and reconnaissance. Reconnaissance aircraft, equipped with high-resolution cameras, flew over enemy lines, mapping defensive positions, identifying troop movements, and assessing the damage caused by previous attacks. This information was vital for planning the next phases of the invasion, allowing Allied commanders to make informed decisions and adapt their strategies in real time. With every flight, reconnaissance pilots risked their lives to collect data that could save thousands of lives on the ground. The fighters, in turn, not only protected the bombers and ground troops, but also engaged in combat air patrol, CAP missions to maintain air superiority over the island. Dogfights, where the pilot's skill and audacity were put to the test, were common. The Sicilian sky became a stage for deadly acrobatics, with aircraft chasing each other in dizzying spirals, unleashing bursts of machine gun and cannon fire, leaving behind trails of smoke and, at times, flaming wreckage. With each aerial victory, the morale of the Allied troops on the ground was boosted, knowing that the sky was under their control, giving them a significant psychological advantage. Suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD, was another dangerous but essential task, where specialized aircraft targeted radars and anti-aircraft batteries, opening safe corridors for the bombers and transport aircraft. The Navy's relentless force, logistics, and protection. At sea, the Allied Navy was not only a striking force, but also the logistical backbone of Operation Husky. The ability to transport and land an entire army with its heavy equipment, ammunition, and supplies was an unprecedented feat of engineering and planning. Troop and cargo transport ships, though less glamorous than warships, were equally vital. They sailed in convoys, constantly threatened by Axis submarines and air attacks, requiring constant vigilance and the protection of naval escorts. The sea route was a lifeline, and any disruption could have catastrophic consequences for the ground forces. Beyond the initial landings, the Navy maintained a continuous flow of supplies and reinforcements to Sicily. Makeshift ports and landing beaches were established and secured, allowing supply ships to unload their cargoes under the constant threat of enemy counterattacks. Naval engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships and keep the fleet operational, ensuring the Allied war machine continued to advance. Protecting sea lines of communication was a top priority, with anti-submarine patrols and mine-sweeping conducted continuously to ensure the safety of convoys. Naval fire support also evolved beyond the initial bombardment. As troops advanced inland, warships provided artillery support on demand, adjusting their targets based on coordinates provided by ground units. This capability, providing accurate and heavy suppressive fire, was invaluable to ground troops, helping to break enemy resistance at key points and secure exposed flanks. Communication between naval and ground units was complex but essential, and the rapid response capability of naval artillery often meant the difference between the success and failure of a ground offensive. Challenges and sacrifices, the price of supremacy. However, air and naval supremacy was not achieved without immense cost. Pilots faced not only anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighters, but also mechanical failures, adverse weather conditions, and extreme fatigue. Many aircraft were lost due to operational accidents, and crews who survived dangerous missions often returned exhausted and traumatized. The lifespan of a combat pilot was notoriously short, and each successful mission was a testament to their resilience and training. At sea, the dangers were equally omnipresent. In addition to torpedoes and mines, ships were subject to attacks from dive bombers and torpedo boats, which could cause catastrophic damage in a matter of seconds. Naval crews lived under the constant threat of being hit, and life aboard a warship in a combat zone was one of unremitting tension. Rescue efforts for survivors from sunken ships were heroic, but many were lost in the cold waters of the Mediterranean. The logistics of ship maintenance and repair were a monumental challenge, requiring a complex network of naval bases and shipyards to keep the fleet combat-ready. The indispensable synergy, the legacy of Operation Husky. In retrospect, Operation Husky serves as a prime example of the importance of synergy between the various armed forces. The Air Force and the Navy did not operate in isolated silos. They formed an intrinsic partnership with the ground forces, each amplifying the other's capabilities. Air superiority allowed the Navy to operate with greater security, while naval firepower paved the way for the advance of ground troops. The ability to project power comprehensively, from sky to sea to land, was what ensured the success of the invasion of Sicily. The legacy of aviation and naval operations in Sicily is a testament to the ingenuity, courage, and sacrifice of the men and women who served in these forces. Their actions not only paved the way for the island's liberation, but also provided valuable lessons that would shape future amphibious and air operations of World War II and beyond. The Sicilian campaign demonstrated unequivocally that in modern warfare, victory depends not only on individual bravery, but on the ability to integrate and coordinate all dimensions of military power to achieve a common objective. The Sicilian sky and sea, once the stage for a deadly dance, became symbols of Allied resolve and the price of freedom. Electronic warfare and the battle for information. An often underestimated but crucial aspect of the aviation and Navy's role in Sicily was electronic warfare and the battle for information. Before and during the landings, specialized aircraft and warships equipped with cutting-edge technology worked tirelessly to intercept and decipher enemy communications. Code-breaking and radio pattern analysis provided the Allies with an invaluable advantage, allowing them to anticipate enemy movements, identify troop and artillery concentrations, and even predict counterattacks. This electronic intelligence was complemented by aerial photographic reconnaissance missions, which mapped Axis coastal defenses, artillery positions, and supply routes in detail. Every photograph, every fragment of intercepted communication was a piece of the puzzle that Allied strategists assembled to ensure the invasion's success. In addition to intelligence gathering, electronic warfare also involved suppressing and confusing enemy communications. Aircraft and ships employed electronic countermeasures, such as dropping chaff, metal strips that confused radar, and using jammers, devices that blocked radio frequencies, to blind and deafen Axis forces. This electronic denial was vital to protecting landing fleets and air formations from coordinated attacks, creating a fog of uncertainty for defenders. The ability to operate in an environment where the enemy was constantly struggling to obtain a clear picture of the situation was a significant tactical advantage, and aviation and Navy were instrumental in establishing and maintaining this electronic superiority. Humanitarian support and evacuation of the injured. Amid the fury of battle, aviation and the Navy also played a vital role in humanitarian support and evacuating the wounded. Transport aircraft, often converted for medical missions, flew to Sicily loaded with medical supplies, blood, and medical personnel, returning with wounded soldiers requiring urgent treatment in field hospitals or on hospital ships. This rapid evacuation capability was crucial to saving lives and maintaining troop morale, ensuring that the wounded received the best possible care in the shortest time. Hospital ships, clearly marked, with the Red Cross, operated in the waters close to the coast, providing advanced surgical facilities and beds for the most seriously wounded. Despite their humanitarian designation, these ships and aircraft still operated in a war zone, and their safety depended on adherence to international conventions and, unfortunately, luck. The Navy was also responsible for search and rescue operations at sea, recovering downed pilots and sailors from sunken ships. Small boats and maritime patrol aircraft scoured the waters for survivors, often under enemy fire. These rescue missions were acts of pure heroism, where the life of an individual was prioritized above all else, demonstrating a commitment to camaraderie and the value of every human life, even amid the brutality of war. Adaptation and innovation in the field. The Sicilian campaign was a laboratory for adaptation and innovation in the field, especially for the aviation and Navy. As the invasion progressed, new tactics and technologies were rapidly developed and implemented. For example, the need for more precise air support for ground troops led to improved air-to-ground communication techniques and the development of procedures for more effective diving attacks against fortified targets. The Navy, in turn, refined its amphibious landing tactics, learning to better coordinate assault waves, suppress coastal defenses, and manage beach traffic more efficiently. The experience gained in Sicily would be invaluable for future amphibious operations, such as D-Day in Normandy. Furthermore, maintaining and repairing aircraft and ships in combat conditions was a constant challenge. Ground and ship crews worked tirelessly, often under precarious conditions, to keep the war machines operational. Improvisation was the norm, with parts cannibalized from damaged aircraft and ships to keep others in service. This resilience and ingenuity were crucial to sustaining the tempo of operations and ensuring that air and naval forces could continue to exert their relentless pressure on the enemy. The Sicilian campaign, therefore, was not only a military victory, but also a testament to the Allied forces' adaptability and innovation in the face of the challenges of modern warfare. The psychological impact and the war of attrition beyond tactics and logistics, the role of aviation and naval forces in Sicily had a profound psychological impact on the fighting forces on both sides. For Allied troops on the ground, the sight of their own planes dominating the skies and the sound of naval guns bombarding enemy positions was a tremendous morale booster. It gave them confidence that they were not alone, that they had overwhelming support, and that victory was a real possibility. Air and naval superiority created a sense of security and invincibility that was vital to maintaining the momentum of the advance, even in the face of fierce Axis resistance. For the Axis forces, however, the situation was the opposite. The constant threat of air raids and naval bombardments, the inability to obtain consistent supplies and reinforcements, and the feeling of being surrounded and isolated undermined their morale and their ability to resist. The drone of Allied aircraft engines and the distant boom of naval artillery became sounds of terror, a constant reminder of their overwhelming disadvantage. This continued psychological pressure, combined with material and human losses, contributed significantly to the collapse of Axis resistance in Sicily, transforming the campaign into a war of attrition where Allied superiority in the skies and seas proved decisive. Specific types of aircraft and ships and their contributions to understand the rich detail of the role of aviation and the Navy. It is important to consider the specific types of aircraft and ships that were employed and their unique contributions. In aviation, heavy bombers such as the B-17 Flying Fortress and B-24 Liberator were the primary tools for long-range strategic bombing, targeting ports, railways and command centers. Medium bombers such as the B-25 Mitchell and B-26 Marauder were used for tactical support and interdiction missions, attacking bridges, roads and enemy troop concentrations. Fighters such as the P-38 Lightning, P-40 Warhawk and Spitfire were essential for air superiority, engaging enemy fighters and protecting bombers and ground troops. Reconnaissance aircraft such as the F-5, a reconnaissance version of the P-38, provided vital intelligence for planning operations. On the naval side, battleships like HMS Nelson and USS Arkansas, with their large-caliber guns, were primarily responsible for heavy naval bombardments against coastal fortifications. Cruisers like USS Philadelphia and HMS Aurora provided faster and more flexible fire support, while destroyers like USS Bristol and HMS Lafaurie were crucial for convoy escort, anti-submarine patrols, and close-in fire support. The landing ships, a diverse category that included LSTs, landing ship tank, LCIs, landing craft infantry, and LCVPs, landing craft vehicle personnel, were the unsung heroes of the landing, transporting thousands of troops and tons of equipment directly to the beaches. Each type of vessel and aircraft had a specialized role, and the combination of their capabilities was what enabled the complexity and success of Operation Husky. The legacy and lessons learned for the future of war. The Sicilian campaign was not just a tactical victory. It was a crucial proving ground for the future of amphibious and aerial warfare. The lessons learned about coordination between forces, the importance of intelligence and electronic warfare, the logistics of large-scale landings, and the psychological impact of air and naval superiority would be applied and refined in subsequent operations, culminating in D-Day. Sicily demonstrated that modern warfare required an integrated approach, where dominance in one domain, air or sea, could be leveraged to gain advantages in another, land. The ability to project power comprehensively from sky to sea to land became a cornerstone of Allied military doctrine. Furthermore, the campaign highlighted the importance of flexibility and adaptation in the field. Allied forces not only executed their plans, but also adjusted and innovated in response to the challenges presented by the enemy and the terrain. This ability to learn and evolve quickly under pressure was a key factor in their success. The legacy of aviation and naval operations in Sicily is therefore a testament not only to individual bravery, but also to the effectiveness of a holistic military approach and the constant pursuit of innovation in the face of adversity. The island, which witnessed the fury of battle, became a landmark in military history, a reminder of the transformative power of coordination and determination in times of war. The challenges of maintenance and logistics in a combat environment. Keeping aviation and navy operational in a combat environment as dynamic as Sicily presented monumental logistical and maintenance challenges. For the Air Force, this meant ensuring a steady flow of fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and, crucially, qualified maintenance personnel. Advanced airstrips, often improvised or hastily repaired, were under constant threat of enemy attack and required continuous maintenance. The dust, heat, and humidity of the Mediterranean took their toll on aircraft, requiring frequent inspections and repairs to prevent mechanical failures in flight. The logistics of transporting these resources through long supply chains, from bases in North Africa and the United Kingdom to Sicily, was a complex operation that required meticulous coordination and protection from enemy attack. For the Navy, the challenges were equally complex. Maintaining a vast fleet of warships and landing ships required access to ports with repair capabilities, dry docks, and a vast array of parts and supplies. Many ships suffered combat damage or mechanical breakdowns that required urgent repairs to keep them on the front line. The ability to perform field repairs, often under adverse conditions and with limited resources, was a testament to the ingenuity and dedication of naval engineering teams. Furthermore, managing naval traffic in such a busy landing area, with hundreds of ships of varying sizes and purposes, required strict maritime traffic control to avoid collisions and ensure the continuous flow of supplies and troops. The role of specialized units and unconventional warfare. In addition to conventional aviation and naval forces, the Sicilian campaign also saw the deployment of specialized units that played crucial, often behind-the-scenes roles. Naval commandos and underwater demolition teams, UDTs, the precursors to modern SEALs, were employed to clear obstacles on the beaches before the main landing, deactivating mines and blowing up anti-landing barriers. These dangerous operations, conducted under the cover of darkness and under the threat of enemy fire, were essential to ensuring that the first assault waves could safely reach the beach. Aviation also utilized special operations units, such as airlift squadrons that dropped paratroopers and supplies behind enemy lines, or reconnaissance aircraft that carried out infiltration and exfiltration missions. These unconventional operations, often high risk and high reward, demonstrated the flexibility and innovative capabilities of Allied forces. They complemented large-scale operations, destabilizing the enemy, gathering vital intelligence, and paving the way for the advance of main forces. The success of these missions depended not only on individual bravery, but also on flawless coordination between the different branches of the armed forces, highlighting the importance of interoperability and joint warfare. The strategic implications and the path to Allied victory. The Sicilian campaign, with its central role played by aviation and the Navy, had far-reaching strategic implications that extended far beyond the island. The Allied victory in Sicily paved the way for the invasion of mainland Italy, forcing the fall of Mussolini and the surrender of Italy, a key Axis partner. This freed up a significant number of German divisions that had been occupying Italy, forcing them to redeploy to other fronts, relieving pressure on the Soviet Union and contributing to the Allied strategy of a two-front war. Furthermore, the Sicilian campaign served as a large-scale dress rehearsal for future amphibious operations, providing valuable lessons that would be applied on D-Day. The experience gained in coordinating air, naval, and ground forces, in the logistics of mass landings, and in overcoming enemy defenses was invaluable for the planning and execution of subsequent invasions. Sicily demonstrated that air and naval supremacy was not only a tactical advantage, but a strategic prerequisite for the success of large-scale operations. The ability to control the skies and seas around a landing zone was crucial to protecting invasion forces, ensuring the flow of supplies and isolating the battlefield, preventing the enemy from reinforcing its defenses. Victory in Sicily, therefore, was not only an achievement in itself, but a crucial step on the road to Allied victory in World War II, a testament to the combined power and unwavering resolve of air and naval forces. Crew, resilience, and the human cost of war. Behind every aircraft and every ship were crews who faced danger and fatigue daily. Life aboard a warship in combat was one of constant tension, with air and submarine attack alarms sounding at any moment. Flight crews, in turn, endured the stress of long and dangerous missions, often in extreme weather conditions and under enemy fire. The resilience of these crews was remarkable, and their ability to continue operating under immense pressure was a critical factor in their success. Many developed unbreakable bonds of camaraderie, depending on each other to survive and accomplish their missions. The human cost of war was evident in the losses suffered by aviation and the Navy. Planes were shot down, ships were sunk, and lives were lost. Each loss was a blow to the units and the families of those who served. However, the determination to continue the fight and belief in the cause overcame fear and pain. The memory of fallen comrades served as a constant reminder of the price of freedom and the importance of their mission. Sicily, with its waters and skies, became the tomb of many, but also the stage where courage and sacrifice were demonstrated in their purest form. The role of intelligence and counterintelligence. In addition to electronic warfare, human intelligence and counterintelligence played a subtle but significant role in the success of air and naval operations. Agents infiltrated into Sicily before the landings provided crucial information about coastal defenses, the location of mines and obstacles, and the disposition of enemy troops. This field intelligence was supplemented by information obtained from prisoners of war and deserters, which provided valuable insights into enemy morale and capabilities. The aviation and Navy used this information to plan their attack routes, identify priority targets, and avoid traps. On the other hand, Allied counterintelligence worked to deceive the enemy about the intentions and exact location of the landing. Deception operations, such as the use of aircraft and ships to simulate landings in other areas, were employed to divert Axis attention from Sicily. Communication security and protection against enemy espionage were top priorities to prevent vital information from falling into the wrong hands. This invisible war, waged behind the scenes of intelligence and counterintelligence, was as important as the battles fought in the skies and seas, ensuring that Allied forces could operate with the element of surprise and the information advantage. the evolution of post-Sicilian tactics and technologies. The experience in Sicily not only validated existing tactics and technologies, but also spurred the evolution and development of new ones. The need for more responsive and precise air support for ground troops led to the development of forward air controllers, FACs, and closer integration between air and ground units. The effectiveness of naval bombardment in suppressing coastal defenses led to the development of more sophisticated doctrines for naval fire support in future amphibious operations. In the field of technology, the Sicilian campaign accelerated the development of more advanced radars for detecting enemy aircraft and ships, as well as improvements in navigation and targeting systems for bombers. The need to protect landing ships from naval mines spurred research and development into new mine-sweeping technologies. Sicily was a catalyst for innovation, demonstrating that modern warfare was a continuous testing ground for new ideas and technologies. The lessons learned and the innovations developed during the Sicilian campaign would have a lasting impact on how wars would be fought in the future, solidifying the indispensable role of aviation and the Navy as pillars of modern military power. Disembarkation in Pachino and eastern Sicily. As chaos gripped Gela and Licata, other Allied forces landed simultaneously in Pachino, in the Cape extreme southeast of Sicily, opening new battlefronts. The objective was simple but deadly: to divide the enemy defense's attention and facilitate the advance into the island's interior. But the simplicity of the plan contrasted with the brutality of what the soldiers would encounter. Upon reaching the sand, the men faced crossfire, explosions, and mines hidden in the dunes. Each advance was won with blood. Soldiers ran, crawled, and faced fortified enemy bunkers, while the sea brought waves that mixed salt water, gunpowder, and blood, making the beach crossing even more dangerous. Allied tanks were pushed forward, attempting to neutralize enemy defenses, but the Germans and Italians had already prepared strategic positions to slow the advance. Grenades exploded near the soldiers' feet, machine guns sliced the air, and each bunker destroyed required extreme effort and almost superhuman courage. In addition to direct combat, soldiers had to contend with the disorientation caused by unfamiliar terrain. White sand beaches, cliffs, and scattered small towns made the advance unpredictable, and each tactical victory was accompanied by painful losses. The landings at Pachino and eastern Sicily were a clear demonstration of Allied strategic planning. While one front attracted the enemy's attention, the other advanced almost unnoticed, causing confusion and slowly collapsing the Axis defenses. But each step forward was achieved with extreme effort, bloodshed, and heroism few could imagine. Sicily became a labyrinth of fire, smoke, and courage, where each beach conquered was just the beginning of an even greater battle that would spread throughout the interior of the island. The German resistance and the scorched earth tactics. As the Allies advanced into the interior of Sicily, they encountered relentless resistance. The Germans, masters of defensive tactics, knew they could not win in direct confrontations against the overwhelming numerical strength of the Allies. So they resorted to scorched earth tactic. They destroyed everything in their path to delay and wear down the enemy. Roads were mined, bridges destroyed, villages burned. Every Allied advance meant facing obstacles carefully designed to slow progress and increase casualties. The soldiers weren't just fighting the enemy, they were fighting the devastated terrain, full of deadly traps and lethal surprises. The forests and hills became ambush fields. German troops fired from hidden positions, and with every step, the Allies risked falling into mines or ambushes. Enemy fire was calculated, precise, and brutal, inflicting constant casualties and forcing the soldiers to advance with extreme caution, but without breaking stride. The burning cities were a grim reminder of the cost of war. Burned out houses, destroyed roads, and the smell of gunpowder and burning wood filled the air. Civilians, when they hadn't evacuated, were tragically caught in the crossfire, further compounding the horror. Despite the destruction and chaos, the Allies advanced. Every obstacle overcome, every bridge rebuilt, and every road cleared was a strategic victory that brought the operation closer to its ultimate goal, conquering Sicily and opening the way to mainland Italy. German resistance, combined with scorched earth tactics, turned the campaign into a continuous inferno of fire, smoke, and courage, where each victory cost blood, sweat, and human lives. In the mountainous heart of Sicily, the town of Troina became one of the most critical and bloody points of the operation. There, German troops had established fortified defenses on strategic hills, transforming every tree, every stone, and every building into a deadly barrier for the Allies. The ensuing battle was intense, prolonged, and brutal. The soldiers advanced slowly, using every available cover to shield themselves from enemy fire. Grenades were thrown with precision, machine guns opened relentless volleys, and the ground shook. Under the impact of heavy artillery, every step forward cost lives, and blood quickly stained the red earth of the hills. Allied tanks were essential in breaking through enemy positions, but German defenses were calculated and strategic, with snipers hidden in trenches and camouflaged bunkers. The advance was painfully slow, and every meter gained required almost superhuman courage. Troina became a veritable inferno. Men screamed, explosions shook the ground, and smoke rose in dense clouds, confusing allies and enemies alike. Despite the brutality, each victory brought psychological and strategic momentum. Each bunker taken meant a step closer to breaking Axis resistance in Sicily. The battle demonstrated that war wasn't just about numbers or equipment, but about courage, sacrifice, and determination. Troina became a symbol of German resistance and Allied persistence, a reminder that even amidst chaos, every strategic move could determine the fate of the operation. With Troina finally conquered, the Allies faced a new challenge. The rugged, mountainous terrain of the Sicilian interior, steep hills, deep valleys, and narrow roads made every advance a test of endurance, skill, and courage. The enemy didn't just engage the soldiers, they used the terrain itself as a weapon. The soldiers advanced with difficulty, often carrying heavy equipment and weapons, while dodging mines, ambushes, and enemy fire hidden high above. Each step was meticulously calculated, but the danger was constant. The enemy attacked from high ground, making the approach almost suicidal. Explosions shook the earth, throwing up rocks, dust, and debris that mingled with the smell of gunpowder and blood. Tanks and artillery struggled to advance along the narrow trails, making them easy targets for enemy snipers and artillery. Each victory was hard fought. Capturing a hill could mean losing dozens of men, but clearing the terrain was essential for the offensive to continue. The mountainous interior transformed the battle into a series of small, intense engagements, each fraught with tension and danger. The setting served as a reminder that war wasn't just about direct confrontation, but also about endurance, strategy, and courage in the face of unforgiving terrain and determined enemies. With each step forward, the Allies moved closer to their ultimate goal, capturing Sicily and opening the way to mainland Italy. But the price of victory remained high. Blood, sacrifice, and heroism marked every hill conquered. The capture of Palermo. After weeks of intense fighting across the Sicilian countryside, the Allies finally approached Palermo, the island's capital. The city represented not only a strategic objective, but also a symbol of victory. However, conquering it would not be easy. The enemy still resisted fiercely, prepared to defend every street and every building with their lives. As they entered the city, the soldiers faced a devastating scene. Narrow streets and ruined. Buildings became fields of fire and death. Grenades exploded near street corners. Machine guns fired from windows and rooftops. And each advance was won with blood and courage. Civilians, many desperate, tried to escape the chaos. while the soldiers sought to balance the offensive with the need to avoid unnecessary deaths. Allied artillery and tanks helped break through the enemy defenses, but progress was slow. Each building taken cost lives, each bunker destroyed required superhuman effort and determination. The city seemed alive, fighting against whoever dared conquer it, but the Allied force advanced with relentless persistence. When Palermo finally fell, the sense of victory was mixed with devastation. The city was partially destroyed, the smell of gunpowder and smoke filled the air, and the ground was stained with the blood of soldiers and civilians. But strategically, the capture of Palermo was crucial. It opened Sicily to the Allied advance and broke the morale of the Axis forces. The fall of Palermo showed that even in the bloodiest battles, every strategic step counted. It was a victory won with heroism, sacrifice, and courage, a reminder that war was as brutal as it was necessary to achieve the ultimate goals. As the Allies advanced inland and captured key cities like Palermo, German forces began to realize that holding their positions in Sicily was becoming impossible. Exhausted, worn down, and surrounded by multiple attack fronts, German commanders made the decision to strategically retreat to the north of the island. But this retreat would not be simple or painless. As they retreated, the Germans applied the tactic of total destruction. Roads were mined, bridges destroyed, and towns partially burned to delay the Allied advance. Every abandoned hilltop, every evacuated village was left with lethal traps and rearguard soldiers willing to fight to the death. The goal was to delay the enemy, gain time, and protect the troops, withdrawing to reorganize. The defense in northern Sicily. The collapse of the Axis defenses was not a quick process. Ambushes and surprise attacks continued to inflict casualties among the Allies, a reminder that even in retreat, the Germans remained dangerous and determined. Allied soldiers advanced cautiously, knowing that every step could be deadly, but driven by the need to pressure the enemy and conquer the island. The destroyed terrain and obstacles created by German tactics made the pursuit slow and exhausting. Each city taken by the Allies was just another step toward victory, but also a reminder of the human toll of war. Lives lost, bodies wounded, and devastated landscapes that would never be the same again. The German withdrawal, although strategic, symbolized the inevitable collapse of Axis defenses in Sicily. The island was gradually being conquered, but the path was far from clear. Each victory was accompanied by destruction, suffering, and extreme heroism. When the last German resistance positions were overcome, Sicily finally fell under Allied control. But the island, once a vital strategic point, now presented itself as a scene of absolute destruction. Cities in ruins, roads ripped up, fields scorched, and the constant smell of gunpowder, smoke, and blood permeating the air. Every victory came at a steep price, and the landscape was a cruel reminder of the cost of war. The Allied soldiers advanced cautiously, still encountering small, isolated resistance, mines, and ambushes. Every building they conquered bore signs of the conflict: destroyed homes, abandoned vehicles, and dead or wounded enemy soldiers. The terrain seemed silent after the violence, but every sound could signal a final enemy attack, keeping everyone on high alert. Despite the chaos, troop morale was high. Every beach, every hill, and every captured city demonstrated that Sicily was now an ally, and that the efforts, blood, and sacrifice had not been in vain. But the soldiers were also confronted with the reality of war. Wounded, dead, and traumatized civilians reminded them that victory came with irreparable losses. Sicily in flames symbolized the ferocity and determination of the Allies, but also the dark side of war. The conquered island would open the doors to mainland Italy, but each step of Operation Husky would be etched in the soldiers' memories as a testament to courage, brutality, and human resilience. The victory in Sicily was not just strategic, it was a bloody and epic chapter in World War II that demonstrated the lethal combination of planning, fire, steel, and extreme heroism. With Sicily finally under Allied control, the strategic effects of the Operation Husky began to reveal themselves in devastating ways for the Axis. The conquest of the island was not just a territorial victory, it was a direct opening for mainland Italy, allowing troops, supplies and tanks to advance across the Mediterranean towards the heart of Europe. The pressure on Mussolini and the Italian regime became unsustainable. The defeat in Sicily triggered a political crisis that would culminate in the dictator's downfall, shifting the balance of power in southern Europe. For the Germans, the loss of Sicily meant their defensive lines in the Mediterranean were compromised, forcing them to redeploy troops and resources in an increasingly desperate war. The human cost of the operation was immense. Thousands of soldiers killed or wounded, cities devastated, and civilians displaced. But the invasion's success proved the effectiveness of a combination of meticulous planning, extreme courage, and coordination between ground, air, and naval forces. Every soldier who set foot in Sicily contributed to a movement that would alter the course of the war. As Sicily conquered became more than a strategic territory. It became a symbol of Allied determination and the brutality of war. Operation Husky demonstrated that even amid chaos and destruction, courage and human sacrifice could pave the way for historic change, literally opening the door to the liberation of Italy and paving the way for the next decisive confrontations in Europe. The battle was over, but its bloody and epic legacy would remain etched in the memories of those who fought and in world history, reminding us that every victory in World War II came at an extraordinary price. The victory in Sicily left profound marks, not only on the strategic map of World War II, but also on the minds of soldiers, commanders, and civilians. Operation Husky showed the importance of meticulous planning, coordination between land, naval, and air forces, and the extreme sacrifice that each victory required. The soldiers who survived forever bore the physical and emotional scars of that conflict. Every hill conquered, every bunker destroyed, and every city taken was remembered with a mixture of pride and horror. Civilians, for their part, witnessed the devastation of war, learning that freedom and security often came at an unbearable price. Strategically, Sicily opened the way to mainland Italy and hastened Mussolini's downfall, changing the course of the war in Europe. But the operation's legacy goes beyond its military consequences. It became an example of human courage in the face of chaos, the brutality of war, and the strength of collective resolve. Perhaps the most enduring lesson is that war, no matter how planned, always demands unimaginable human sacrifices. Operation Husky remains in history as an epic, testament to courage, suffering, and resilience, a reminder that every victory in war was written in blood, fire, and extreme heroism. The invasion of Sicily, it was more than a battle. It was an extreme test of courage, strategy, and human endurance. Soldiers advanced across blood-stained beaches, ruined cities, and treacherous terrain, facing determined enemies and deadly obstacles at every turn. The sacrifice was immense, but each victory achieved paved the way for decisive changes in the war, including the fall of Mussolini and the Allied advance toward mainland Italy. The operation's legacy remains a powerful reminder. War is brutal, relentless, and demands almost superhuman courage. But it also reveals the resilience of the human spirit, the determination to fight for a greater purpose, and the impact of strategic decisions on the course of history. Sicily in flames, the hills covered in blood, and the devastated cities tell a story of heroism and tragedy, of victory and loss that echoes in the memory of World War II. Every soldier who fought, every civilian affected, and every plan executed with precision left indelible marks. A reminder that history is not just made of dates and maps, but of men and women who braved hell to change the fate of the world. Sicily showed that war is both terrible and epic, a stage where courage, sacrifice, and strategy collide, and where each battle won opens the door to an uncertain but hopeful future.